Cliffhanger, the real story behind the adventure movie Everest. Climbing Mount Everest was the biggest mistake I've ever made in my life. I'd wish I'd never gone. I suffered for years of post-traumatic stress disorder and still suffer from what happened. I'm glad I wrote a book about it, but if I could go back and relive my life, I would have never climbed Everest. Jon Krakauer, August 13, 2015. The Mount Everest disaster of 1996 remains one of the most tragic climbing expeditions of all time and is seeing a big-budget adaptation for the very first time nearly 20 years later in Everest. The movie is sure to be a tearjerker, made even more powerful by the realization of what really happened during that fateful 1996 expedition. This epic adventure wowed audiences with its seat-edge scenes, but what really happened during the 1996 climbing catastrophe that inspired it? The events depicted in Everest really did happen. In an event known as the 1996 Mount Everest disaster, 8 people died after being caught in a massive blizzard at the summit of the world's tallest point. It was the most fatalities ever recorded on the mountain in a single day at the time. The disaster had inspired multiple documentaries and a number of books, with the most notable being Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer, one of the survivors in the 1996 expedition, which was later adapted into a TV movie. In the newest telling, Everest, Gyllenhaal's character, Scott Fisher, and Clarke's character, Rob Hall, are seen as the actual leaders of the 2 ill-fated expedition, and here's what really happened to them. In case you aren't aware, Mount Everest is located in the Himalayas, straddling the border between China's Tibet region and Nepal. The mountain rises over 29,000 feet, and the climb is incredibly dangerous, a fact that was never more apparent until May 10, 1996, when a group of climbers from 2 expeditions start their final ascent to the summit of Mount Everest, the highest point on Earth. Jon Krakauer, who took part in the guided ascent of Mount Everest, reached the peak and returned to camp. Unfortunately, 4 of his teammates, including group leader Rob Hall, died while making their descent in the storm that greeted them with little warning from the base camp. Once they reached the summit of Mount Everest and about to make their descent, the team were hit with violent storm that struck the mountain, engulfing the adventurers in one of the fiercest blizzards ever encountered by man. And to survive the challenge brought by the harsh conditions, the team must endure blistering winds and freezing temperatures in an epic battle to survive against nearly impossible odds. This allowed time for a freak blizzard to develop during the descent. Freezing, running out of oxygen, and with snow covering their ropes and trail, the climbers were stuck in quite possibly the worst place on Earth. Rob Hall, the team leader, volunteered to stay at the summit with Doug Hansen, who completely run out of oxygen. The 2 of them were stranded together when Hall radioed for help, and he found it when guide Andy Harris climbed to them solo. But it was too late. Hansen was dead, and soon Harris and Hall lost contact with one another. Both died, but Hall was able to speak to his wife via satellite phone before passing away. His body was eventually recovered, while the bodies of Harris and Hansen have never been found. Aside the recordings from the survivors, no one can really tell what happened on Mount Everest during the 1996 expedition disaster, but it seems that the creative minds behind the 18th September 2015 Everest film tried their best to respectfully dramatize real events, and that might be the best anyone can hope for. Everest. Never let go.